we feel yourself to be seen by all. To save these people from poverty and to give them the days us through. The teachings of Jah. So I said the teachings of Jah.
Taia te kōrero, taia te wānanga, taia te pai wao. Kia uru mai rā koutou ki roto ki te ware kōrero e tū nei. Tenei te pō nau mai te ao. E te iwi kia ora tātou katoa. Kia ora everybody. Che Wilson here from Che's channel, Te Pai Waho. Here for Taite Talks tonight. And we're changing things a bit tonight. We've got some manuhiri. And I'm going to introduce them. Our first manuhiri is Patricia Kume, tēnā koe. And our second manuhiri is Elijah, tēnā koe, kōrua.
Tēnā koe, kia ora tātou.
Great to have you on here tonight for Taite Talks. And we might have another manuhiri join us later on. And fingers crossed we do. Hoi anō. I'm going to hand it straight over to you both first. And we'll start with you, Kume. To introduce who you are, and then you can hand it over to LJ and we can go from there.
Mauri ora tātou, ko ai au, ko Patricia Maraikura tōku ingoa, heuri wakatipu tēnei o te ao Onanui. Ai, go cousin.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou, ko Elijah Pue tōku ingoa, no ngā iwi maha o te kāhui maunga ahau, kei raitahi ahau e noho ana. Hei kaimahi mō Ngāti Rangi, o tira he mōkai mō taku hāpori o Waimarino. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, tēnā kōrua. So great to have you both on. And you're already getting a tēnā koe e te from Liara, the LJ. So I'm going to hand it straight over to you both. For those that are new to Taite Talks, Taite Talks is when I have a manuhiri, and in this case a couple of manuhiri, who will just ask me questions about te ao Māori, tikanga Māori. And so I'm going to hand it straight over to Kume to do the first question, and then we can go from there. Hei a koe.
Uncle.
Yes.
Ka tīmata Elijah.
Oh, ne? Okay. Oh, well, she's spoken, so go for it, Elijah.
Me koe te pōtaki ne, so māko e tīmata. No reira, tērā pia ko tētahi kaupapa e tino rata ana ahau, ko te me pēhea te hunga rangatahi, te hunga rangatakapu me ki, te ruku hohonu ai ki roto i ngā taumata ike o te ao Māori.
Hei tauira?
He kaupapa nui te, he pātai nui te rā, tērā pia, kei te hikaka mātau, kei te riri mātau, te eke ki ngā taumata o ngā mātua, ki etahi o ngā āhuatanga o ngā mātua e kawe. No reira, me pēhea e tika ai te eke me te ako i era āhuatanga e kawe nei e koutou.
Okay. Pātai pai tērā, tikatai, pātai hohonu tērā. So the question that's being asked is how do people transition from their rangatahi or rangatakapu roles into a mātua role within the culture? And so I think there's a couple of components to that question. The first one is the community, whether that's the mātua, the kaumātua, as well as those rangatakapu and rangatahi, that there's readiness for all that are involved in whatever the kaupapa might be or the ceremony might be. And there has to be readiness so that people can then be comfortable with allowing others to have a go. And that's all about succession. That's also about people being comfortable with their knowledge, or even if they have limited knowledge, being comfortable to pass over to others who might be younger, who might actually have more knowledge, but because they're younger, they're kept at bay. Notwithstanding the fact that in some tribes, they're still very strict about who can and who can't speak. And so all of those components together got to be mindful of. But I think the most important thing is you've got to, and I know from my own experience, you've got to test the young ones out in safe environments. And once they've done it and they've passed that first test, you keep putting them through the next ones. And so that's the mātua job. And like the first time I ever did what I called a real high kōrero was at Raitihi. Went on to a tangi, and Uncle Matt, he said to me, e tū. And that's from a generation where you never said no, you just did what you were told to do, or you never questioned it. And I was 14 and I stood up, my legs were shaking, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then a couple of weeks later, he stood me up in Wellington. He said, e tū. And both times he took the piss out of me in a really neat, funny way, to make me laugh at myself rather than stress out at all my mistakes that I did. So that's just, I suppose, an entry point to the answer, because it's a massive answer. And and the way they taught me is they would give me kōrero, give me tauparapara and ruruku, and as soon as I started using those, then I got more. And so it was a continual test, because if I wasn't using them, then that told them that I wasn't ready for anything else. So that's an example of well, that's scratching the surface of your question, I suppose.
Well, I think that's quite good, because I think often people wait to be taught or wait for a wānanga when they actually don't realise that they're being fed in other ways. And it might be as simple as attending hui and or sitting in a pōhiri, and while they're not, you might not be traditionally said, well, this is how you do it, rehua. It's actually by listening i te whakarongo noa, you actually are being fed that same way. And
whakarongo titiro mahi. And like I was always told, aere ki ngā ui e ringa ringa waiwai mō ngā marae. And when you do that, that's how you learn. Any thoughts on that, Kume?
I'm more of a in the kitchen person, as you know. No, this is my whakaaro. So we were at a tangi recently and they needed a kai karanga. Clearly everyone looked at me, your typical Māori teacher, and they're like, oh, Māori, you do the karanga. I was like, wow, actually, no, if I can't do the karanga on my own marae, I'm not going to, that's just my whakaaro. I've still got aunties that, can do it.
So that I've got a question on that, because I hear a lot of people say that if I can't do the karanga or the high kōrero on my own marae, I'm not going to do it anywhere else. And you're different, but a lot of those people, they don't even go to their maraes. So it's just an excuse. So what's that about?
It's like I can't even, I don't have the, what is it? I have the audacity to do it on this marae when I can't even go back home and, do it on my own marae. That's my own whakaaro. Someone else might think different.
I think what I'm asking is, where has that been taught from?
No, well, it's that tuakana taina thing. A lot of people wait for their tuakana to lead things first. And it's a bit like the moko kauai kōrero. A lot of people say, oh, I'm waiting for my such and such, my kuia, to get hers first, and then I'll get mine. Well, it's the same with the karanga. It's the same with the whai kōrero, or my brother, my ora, or my uncle. Oh, I mean, ka rau te whakapono, but you can see why people don't. each to their own, I suppose, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting though. Like, I know that there's the Hokatauki where you learn on your own marae. I get that. But sometimes when you're the only one, or sometimes when you go onto an ope, there are people who I know that can karanga who won't karanga and just won't. And I'm going, well, waste of knowledge. And I know for me, people who do that tells me that I shouldn't be giving them kōrero because they're selective. Because sometimes you have to actually carry the people with you, and that's what service is. Service is about thinking about a greater kaupapa to help. And like, I know, Patricia, you've said what you've said, but if you're with me and I told you, you'd just do it. So,
Yeah. But
that's a different context because there's somebody to look after you.
but if I were to make a mistake on that marae,
Yeah.
for myself, I'd feel wakama. But if I were to make a mistake on my own marae, it'd be right because like, that's just, I don't know. That's I'm a bit selfish when I think of my te ao Māori. I'm confident, but I'm still really whakama.
Yeah. I think it's, what's that quote? Knowledge is power. And I think if you know, and e mātou ana ki ērā āhuatanga, me kawe, because if you don't, what's the point? That's what I think. I mean, if you've been taught and if you've been fed and you know what you're doing, just give it a go. You can't. I'd rather someone give it a go as opposed to te noho noa.
Ka pai. Good kōrero kōrua. Have you texted our mate to see if he's coming?
It's probably not. Anyway.
He's in the pai apparently.
So what's your next question? Who's next?
Well, I'll go. This is big for me. Anyway, me kaupapa matua te reo Māori ki ngā kura katoa. Because I'm on the fence. Like, I'd love for it to be a main subject in schools. Heoi, there are, probably shouldn't say this out loud, but there are not a lot of, what's the word?
Kōrero, just say straight up.
There are not a lot of teachers who have, I don't know the word. I don't know how to articulate my
capability.
Yeah, they lack it. You know, well, I've seen with my eyes. Oh, I shouldn't say stuff like this here. I've seen some teachers and what they teach is a little bit. So I'd rather there be capable te reo Māori teachers, and apparently, like from what I see, there aren't many of them in kura, especially kura auraki. They've got Māori speaking teachers here, none that are
capable enough. So I think there's two branches to this tree, and one is where me tika te reo, and then there's the other one, me kōrero te reo. And so those are usually the two positions that people will take. Well, better to kōrero, give it a go, tika mai he mai, kia rere te kōrero, or the other one is, no, it needs to be correct. We need to be teaching things properly. And we've got a manuhiri joining us. So e te iwi, this is Tawhiao. Tēnā koe Tawhiao.
Kia ora tātou. Tēnā koe uncle. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora. And so we're just answering a question which Patricia has posed around teaching and
Okay.
quality versus
quality. That's it.
Yeah, quality versus kōrero, I suppose. Yeah, and so there's and for me, I would probably prefer quality, though I get and I appreciate people who are giving it a go. But when it comes to teaching it, that's another story. So that's why I'd go with quality, because we need it to be good. Because like heaps of people ask me, "Oh, can you teach me te reo?" And I says, "Oh, no good asking me. I don't know the rules for the reo. I'll mix things up and I'll get you in trouble."
Yeah. And I think what it comes down to is the way you learn to teach te reo. I think we can all learn te reo, how to speak te reo, and, e tehi o tātou I haere ki te whare wānanga mō tērā kaupapa. But I think he āhuatanga nō te...
Wō tātou.
It's just a little bit like I am in te reo, and I thought I'd come home and run a night class. And I did it for the first year I came home. And actually, it was hard. It was hard work. And it's hard work because I don't know how to teach te reo. I know te reo and the structure and the rules, and I think I'm pretty good at it. But, oh man, I struggle to pass that on to people in a way that allows them to understand and get it and then be able to share it with others. It's really difficult.
It's hard. And it's hard teaching low-level learners. You've got to know the rules to the language. We learn by ear, not, you weren't saying the noun's here because so-and-so. So when the kids ask me, "Oh, why is that there?" And I'm like, well, it's there because...
Okay.
Yeah.
Engari,
yeah, but breaking it down, it's really different. So, me kaupapa matua, I think, yes, but then that's kind of forcing it on these kids, which then leads them to hating our reo and,
Well, I think people say that a lot. They throw that excuse around. If you put it on people, they end up hating it. No one hates English. No one hates maths. Well, no one hates it and so much so that they're going to get rid of it as a core subject. I think there's two trains of thought when you ask, should it be compulsory? And I think, yes, it should be compulsory because so it grows the number of multi-language speakers in our country, but only at such a time where our system allows for it, i.e. when we have enough good teachers, good qualified teachers who can teach it properly, then yes, it should be. And I'm not sure if we're quite there yet. But I will also say, and a certain person commenting on the thread will agree with me, or her grandmother will, is that if you do want to learn te reo, go to kura.
And I think one of the most important things that we've learnt from this time of COVID is that the traditional methods of kanui ki te kanui akonga, learning face to face, is very important. But now we have showed that we're able to adapt ourselves so that we can actually question whether or not we need to have that kanui ki te kanui akonga I ngā wā katoa. So we can actually have one person to even 500, one quality person of te reo Māori teach up to 500 online for a specific reason, for a specific purpose, following and trying to uphold the rules that I'm not sure if Patricia has already outlined them, but the rules that have been set in place regarding learning te reo Māori. So there's this new narrative that we're kind of creating, in that now we can actually question whether or not we are restricted by this concept of how quality is practically implemented in learning te reo Māori.
Ka pai. Oh, well, that took us on a nice little trip there, Kume. Tawhio. So Patricia and Elijah have both had turns at asking a question of tikanga Māori or te ao Māori, whatever it is. So what's your question? And I'll get them to answer
it. My question is probably more to do with the collision of tikanga and ture more so, but of recent you would hear that there's a case, a Peter Ellis case, that discusses whether or not the concept of tikanga, albeit a concept at all, can actually be incorporated into the law. And you will have, for example, a whole bunch of scholarly legal beagle jurisprudence minds analysing our Te Awa Tupua Act and how they draw to that as an example of tikanga in the law. So my main question is, can tikanga truly be incorporated in the law?
Interesting
In the
question.
life that you have, in the rules and the policies that you have to abide by on a regular basis, and give us an example, and give us your form of measurement.
Yeah, you're a hard case, all right. Well, I was one of the people invited to provide comment to Crown Law and the Māori Law Society as a result of the Peter Ellis case. And I think it's really important for everybody watching to know that kawa and tikanga is law. And we have continued to talk about the difference between LAW and LORE, thinking that LAW is Pākehā and LORE is Indigenous. LORE has been a weapon that has been created to dumb down anything that didn't align with the rulers. And it became a once upon a time when actually te kawa ora, that's the kawa that is invoked to open and bless a marae or ware, is actually imbuing our traditional Māori law LAW into those places and into the society that live at those places. What our challenge is that we have been so colonized that we then do the work for the colonizer. And so my simple answer is absolutely kawa and tikanga are law. Kawa are the founding principles, which would be like the Magna Carta, and tikanga is the implementation of those principles into how we live and behave. And then ritenga, which is a third part, which isn't often talked about, but ritenga are then the habitual practices. And so I think it's really important that we need to shift our thinking to celebrate the mana and the tapu that has been given to us from our own divinity, to be able to then practice that and live that. And so yeah, I better slow down because I'm getting a bit emotional on this kaupapa. But I think we should be living kawa and tikanga every day. And like people think that tikanga is that stuff that you do at the marae, when tikanga is the way you live your life. So you don't just separate your tea towels at the marae. You should be separating them all the time. Otherwise, you might as well use your undies to wipe your plate. And that, because tikanga isn't just about complicated issues. Oh, hear me, Tam. Of course you'd say that. He's saying jurisprudence. Because tikanga isn't just about the do's and don'ts, but it's about how we live our lives well. And the challenge is that law will often focus in on the don'ts. And this is the opportunity, is that for a very long time now, over 180 years almost, we have had English common law superimposed on this land, which already had its own law. And what we have to do, and it will be a journey, is we have to start to revive and give breath back to the law of this land. And that's not by putting a Māori word and saying, oh, yeah, we've ticked the box. But it's actually putting those principles back in. And I think what happened at the Supreme Court is a pretty massive snowball, hopefully over time. Any thoughts, Patricia and Elijah?
I think that
Yes.
I don't want us to get stuck in a place where we spend our lifetimes trying to weave the te ao Pākehā me te ao Māori. I think we are expected as Māori to do enough for the Pākehās and for the Crown, let alone having to try and weave our two laws together. I think that's the system we live in, and that's our reality, and that we have a responsibility to try and strike that balance. But I just get annoyed sometimes when they rely on us so much to do everything else cultural, and then expect us to weave tikanga into the LAW. And I just think, it just annoys me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Plus, cousin, tell us your tikanga, but do it our way. Like, we want to know your tikanga, but this is how you do it, like, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we don't have those resources to be able to continue doing that. And so until the system changes, and this is the wero, and while we said we weren't being political, this is the wero to those in power, those recently elected to power, that they need to, start looking at that well-earned and well-deserved systemic change. Yeah.
Right, it looks like I'm in charge now, so.
Well, Uncle Che's laptop has just died, so I suppose more with just to take us away, and following with what Patricia had just said about her being in charge now. Can I have a part A of my question one? Thank you. Go on, Nene. With this issue of weaving things, and one of the things that comes with weaving is that if you miss one plat, then you have to go back no matter what. So one of the things that the law will always have an issue with weaving with tikanga is that if we muck up once, we're going to have to go all the way back to fix it back up. No mai hoki mai aku.
They go all the way back, or you carry on, and that mistake's always going to be there.
Yep, and that mistake can either leave a weak spot in whatever it is, your whāriki of your life. And so following that, Te Kote had said, kāku au ki te ture he matua mo te pani. And with a lot of the restrictions that the law has on a lot of our day-to-day things, especially with local government, I suppose this question 1A is posed at you more, Elijah. What are your views with the restrictions that the Local Government Act or that the local government legislation has on the establishment of Māori wards?
I've been quite vocal on that, and that it's racist. It's pure racist, that one there, that R word that everyone hates. And it's racist because any changes to other wards within our district, they don't have to go through this poll system. It's just anything Māori ward related has to be polled. And so that requirement needs to change to either make it blanket, that any changes to wards have to be poll. You have to invite members to do a poll, or you get rid of the entire thing. And so I'm not sure which one is best, but what I do know is that we need to get rid of that just for Māori anyway. Ruapehu District Council, and actually just last night, South Taranaki District Council voted for Māori wards. And so now we've got this, we're in this limbo, kind of waiting until end of January to see whether or not we'll get a petition, or there'll be a member of the public that'll petition council. I saw a letter in the Ruapehu Bulletin yesterday which intimated that there might be one here at home. So I'm just patiently waiting. I hope not, because I think we're past that.
This is where Māori in some of the more rural district councils need to join together, because collectively they are large ratepayers, and just stop paying rates if they continue to do this to us. You know, you save those rates, that putia, for the time when it's ready to help our community again. But you know, money talks, and so we just got to play that game. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, I think like it's only like a lot of people like are celebrating that the council had made this decision, but it was really only the first step, and there are so many other things that you have to consider within this proposal. And a lot of people are talking about, where do iwi relationships sit in here? Does each iwi get a member? How does it work? Am I going to be in that seat? You know, all of these things, they'll come eventually. Right now, it's just that waiting game to see if it's going to go ahead. I think, though, if we do get a petition, we've got a bit of work ahead of us, all of us, Pākehā mai, Māori mai, to campaign for what's right. So, who knows?
Awesome.
Waikato, waikatohu.
Ka pai. So kia ora tātou. That's our time up, and we had a special Taite talks tonight with having Patricia, Elijah, and Tāwhiao, and the different kaupapa that we've discussed. And one of the comments that's said there by my older sister is right around Tāwhiao's first question. And she said, tikanga has been established to keep us safe. And that's what law's supposed to do. Law is supposed to keep us safe. However, what law has tended to do is to protect those with the most power. And sometimes it keeps us safe. Pardon?
I've got one more very important pātai.
Ka pai. Wepua.
Ka pai.
This is an issue that I'm dealing with. How do we keep a lot of Māori kids are falling through the crack, so to speak, not going to classes, so and so. How do we, as Pakeke, or I don't afi them, because it's not nice to see, and it's not nice to feel helpless.
So I think one really simple way of doing that, and I'd like to hear the others' comments on it as well, is find two people that you can mentor, two people that you can help, or even just one. And if we can all do that, think of how much we could do, how much better we could be. If we all found one person, one young person that we could look after and just keep an eye on. And more than just say, how are you in there, but actively take them to sports and attend different things with them, and to be a surrogate matua wāngai, I suppose.
Well, I want to do that, but as a Māori, well, any Māori in a kura Pākehā, in a Pākehā, workforce, you're quite restricted to what you do, can and can't do to help these kids.
And I remember when I first started work back in the olden days, after university.
Ngā rā o ngā moa.
Nō reira, my mate that I was working with, he was part of a Pacific mentoring program, and it was bloody awesome. The things that he had to do and take the boy around, and then sometimes bring the boy to work and all of that stuff. And so there's a heap of these programs out there, but the more that we do this and create the ripple effect, thank you, Carol Kiwi, the more we do that, the better it will be for all of us, because we're contributing to society and making sure that our people don't fall through the gaps.
Yeah. I think that there's two trains of thought. So, firstly, be a role model ourselves. So, because I feel like we haven't fallen through those cracks, we have a responsibility to be good role models to our kids and our cousins and our nieces and nephews that are coming up through the ranks, and prove to them that you can go to Ruapu College and you can go to Taite Primary School and you can still be the Prime Minister, or you can still be a councillor, or you can get a good job, or all of these things. You can earn good money. People like money. Whatever. You can achieve your dreams and aspirations if you come from Cooney or if you come from Raitahi. The second train of thought is similar to what you're saying, Uncle, about find that one person. And it's on election day, I grabbed the work van and I drove around Raitahi and I picked up our cousins, that are, just turned 18, 19, and took them to vote. And I found it really hard for them to get into the van, probably because it was one of those black vans with tinted windows. But once you got one of them in the van, then all their mates jumped in and they're like, oh yeah, it's cool. The bro's in there. Tuku's in there. I'll jump in the van. And so it was finding that one person that can prove to his mates that, achieving and doing things out of the ordinary is cool. And so, it's that saying, me pehe te whakakoongia I ngā āhuatanga Māori, te reo Māori, a hātu rānei. And so find that cool guy to do it, and then everyone else will follow.
True today. Tatwheel?
No. Well, this is a tautoko au I te katoa o ngā kōrero. And yeah, Patricia, whatever struggles it is that you and your fellow peers are going through, that's a very big one, especially as a Māori, because all you want to do is see our own develop firstly, but you are restricted in a lot of ways, through keeping professionalism, but also making sure that you don't keep out of trouble. So the first one for kaiako who are facing those type of situations, it's a matter of understanding more. First is kaiako, I'll just answer that one straight to your fellas take. It's a matter of understanding your employment responsibilities during the times that you have your responsibility at the locations, and kind of being creative in outside scenarios with working with other entities like community services, iwi. As kaiako, you fellas have that great bridge and that great potential to do those things outside of work, and it's just a matter of you declaring that that's what you'd like to do and getting the permission through the connection that you have from the kura. If not that, the kura doesn't have to actually. It's the parents.
Right.
So the parents can permit you to do those sort of things outside of that time slot, outside of those employment responsibilities and restrictions. And straight to the take as well, for those type of kids, as I suppose one of them, I suppose a lot of people don't really know that I am a son of a very, very nanakia old fella, very nanakia father, who has been imprisoned, who has joined those statistics, and I suppose I was looked at a lot in possibly joining those statistics as well. Somehow I went the other way with all the love of the iwi, and my friends through kura like Patricia is usually putting me in trouble actually, keeping me out of it. And yeah, now becoming a lawyer, working at a large law firm, it's a matter of showing, as what Elijah said, showing that you can be the difference, but it's also giving that generation, the leaders of now and of tomorrow, the hope and the vision, showing them ai te kore whakakitenga kangaro te iwi. So you're giving our youth the vision to be great by showing what you do, by being a counsellor, by teaching them, by being a great teacher, by being a great tohunga, political advocate, and an aspirational, positive Māori lawyer. So it's those things.
We need to make our own great again.
Yeah, no, not the way where that kōrero comes from, but yes, Absolutely. Absolutely. Because now, as what Patricia was saying, there's too many cracks to the point that people are so used to walking on a pathway that they don't actually know is a crack itself, because that's the system that we live in. So it's a matter of making sure that we have our backs, that we are creative, and that we have our vision. So that's me for answering that. Thank you for that hard question, Patricia.
Thank you for that question, Kume. And
That just gets to me. Thanks for that.
well, and there's someone who's been saying that there's a program called Future Leaders, and Jethro is the director, and so he works with a lot of youth. So thank you, Tracy Miller, and it's futureleaders.nz. So check that out. That's cool that people are helping and sharing. So ka te ake te iwi. This is Taite Talks, and really appreciate Patricia, Elijah, and Tāwiao for joining on Taite Talks tonight. And really cool change to Taite Talks tonight. So it was nice to have a few people on. And I think as we think about tikanga, as we think about being asked to do different things outside of your area, and we think about succession, the place of kawe and tikanga in guiding future behaviour in Aotearoa, I think the most important thing that we can do to guide people away from the cracks is to help them to fall in love with who we are as te iwi Māori, as Māori culture. Because yes, all of the bad stuff is shown, but there's way more good stuff. And the more we can fall in love with who we are, the better things will be. Ka te ake, e mihi ana kia koutou, kia tātou katoa. Elijah, you can lie down now because we all know you're in your bed.
He ki ngā.
Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tūturo, tiwa ka maua kia tīna.
Tēnā.
Tae ki e.
Ai, ki.
Kia ora rā.
Kia ora koutou.